Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Hi, up here on the stage. Welcome, everyone, to Brew Talks CBC 2019. Thank you all for coming. Big round of applause for Cervantes Masterpiece for hosting us tonight. And the wonderful staff here that's serving up beers and food and keeping you guys fed. My name is Chris Fernari. I'm the editor of Brewbound and one of the hosts of tonight's program. I know there are a lot of events that you guys could be at during CBC, so we really appreciate that you guys are here for Brew Talks to listen to our wonderful guests and speakers that we have on tap tonight. We have a couple different discussions that we're going to be getting into, but before we do, I just wanted to give a special shout out first and foremost to the Brewbound team. We've got a lot of folks behind the scenes that make my job a whole lot easier up here. So Josh and Joe, our AV team, sitting right up here in front. We've got Sarah and Trisha from the Dogfish side doing registration. My colleague Justin Kendall in the back. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone that's here today. Jackie doing social media. She's running around. Big round of applause for the crew, please. And, we wouldn't be able to do this without our sponsors. Dogfish Head is our official brewery partner for Brew Talk, so they're supplying all the beers you're drinking tonight. Keg Logistics is our presenting supplier sponsor and a wonderful partner of ours. And we've got a whole bunch of other sponsors that you can see listed up here. Where are our sponsors? Can I get just a big shout for our sponsors? Stand up, say hi. Yeah. Please connect with our sponsors for Brew Talks. Like, without these guys, it wouldn't be possible. So during the networking breaks, please come find them. They're wonderful partners of ours, and it truly wouldn't be able. We truly wouldn't be able to do this without them. So without further ado, let's get to the main event. I think these are probably going to be the first words that have ever been spoken on this stage. These exact words in this order: bee pollen, quinoa, pink Himalayan sea salt. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm the first person to ever string those words together on this stage. You wouldn't ordinarily expect to find these ingredients listed on a beer label, but increasingly brewing companies are pushing more functional offerings as they look to appeal to consumers seeking healthier alcohol options. It's a new approach for a growing number of craft breweries, who for years have churned out calorie-dense barrel-aged stouts and high-octane IPAs. Nothing wrong with those. I love those. But now they're turning to lighter and more sessionable offerings made with non-traditional ingredients as a source of growth. Smaller beer companies are on a quest to cut into surging sales of Michelob Ultra, which grew 15.7% to $1.9 billion in off-premise sales over the last 52 weeks, according to IRI. So that's the size of the prize that everybody is after. Outside of beer, there's also an emerging class of hard kombucha makers that are vying for a slice of the pie as well. So here with us today to talk about this emerging segment of better for you products are Boochcraft co-founder and CMO Adam Hiner, Sufferfest founder and CEO Caitlin Landesberg, and Sam Calagione, the co-founder and CEO of Dogfish Head, our presenting sponsor. Coming up, guys. Welcome to the Brew Talk stage.
Thank you.
Are you surviving, Adam, without a hard kombucha? Sufferfesting your way through functional beers up here?
This is good stuff. I'm doing just fine. Yeah.
So let's start with an easy one. All of your companies are playing in this space. Sam, you guys have sort of pivoted into this space over the last year and a half, 2 years with some of your offerings, Sequench being sort of the first one that was really going after that crowd. Caitlin, you took a dedicated approach right from the start, going after health-conscious consumers and athletes. And then Adam, you're making hard kombucha. Kombucha is a product that I think has really come on in recent years on the non-alcoholic side, and now we're starting to see higher octane versions of it. But there's also a hard seltzer. There's a number of teas and lower calorie options. Just today we saw Craft Brew Alliance announced a 2% hard seltzer that's 50 calories. We're seeing more straightforward 99-calorie Pilsner plays. Seems like everybody's kind of rushing into this piece of the segment. So what's driving the emergence of better-for-you products and gluten-reduced beer with functional ingredients? And where do you guys see it all going? I'll start with Adam.
For us, I think a lot of the drivers just people wanting to feel better about the ingredients that are in the products they're consuming. From our perspective, the founders, Todd, myself, and Andrew, we really cared about what we were eating and the food we were eating and knowing where the ingredients come from. And that was a big driver of us starting an alcoholic kombucha company, was to create a product that we could put the ingredients on the label and be proud of where they were being sourced and certified organic ingredients. So I think people are really starting to care about what they're consuming, and that's a big driver from our perspective.
Yeah. How about for you, Caitlin?
I was stumbled into this in a very non-traditional way. I still call Sufferfest a happy accident. I wasn't looking for a white space out there to brew, to fill some sort of gap. I'm an ultra distance runner. About 6 years ago, I started making beer that I could drink, that I was really enjoying, that I could share with my club runners and my cyclist friends. Because I wanted something at that finish line moment, that occasion where I was celebrating, where I always wanted to really lean on a great craft beer, but nothing out there want to address my nutritional needs and my athletic focus needs, but also there's no brand that sort of talked to me authentically. So I decided to do it myself, but that's certainly what we're looking for. I think I went into this very selfishly and self-referentially and realized really quickly that I wasn't alone. So I think the space has always been there. The community's always asked for this kind of beer, this purpose brew beer, but no one's really addressed it in a way that's, I think, from a craft focus, really focused on quality and ingredients and full flavor.
Sam, you also started getting into this space a little bit selfishly as well, correct?
Yeah, I started getting older and fatter, and I didn't want to stop drinking. So I was like, "Fuck, we better come up with something that tastes good that doesn't make us so fat." But we really, for us, it started with Namaste about a decade ago as a lower ABV. In that era, our average beer was about 10% alcohol, and Namaste at 4.8 with a very yoga-themed concept that my wife Mariah, who's here, came up with, started that path for us. And we started doing these pints and poses yoga events. Trish actually runs a lot of them as a yogi, and saw a pathway there that we kind of formalized more 4 years ago when we started brewing Sequench Ale. We brewed it in the 500th year anniversary of the Reinheitsgebot to kind of give a high five and a middle finger to that law. Since our brewery's always been, the majority of our beers have always been culinary ingredient oriented. And I think the seed was really planted as we revived these ancient ales from Midas Touch to Chateau Giahu, because ancient brewers were the physicians, the shamans of their civilization. Before there were doctors, people were making tinctures with alcohol because it acts as a solvent and strips whatever's nice and oily and good for you off of the herbs and spices. So I think beer's got the longest tradition of being a beverage that can work in this space.
Yeah. And in recent years, you guys, or I should say over the last year or so, you guys have really pushed much heavier into the space. Obviously, a lot of the beers that we see here tonight, a low-calorie IPA brewed with monk fruit. You've got the Super 8 made with 8 different superfood ingredients. Caitlin, you're using bee pollen. Talk to me about just the process of brewing with some of these functional ingredients and how you're actually incorporating them into the product and communicating to the consumer what they're all about.
Sure, yeah, I'll start with that. I think once again, I set out on a mission to find the best finish line beer I can that would be indulgent and replenish my every desire at the end of a sweaty endeavor. I think for a long time, there were a lot of things that we didn't know what we could do, not necessarily from a brewing perspective, but from a compliance perspective. And so with creativity, or constraint brings creativity. Obviously, it doesn't, it's not without its creative constraints and brewing constraints to have new ingredients or non-conventional ingredients. But there's a lot of ingredients, to Sam's point, that have been used for ages and ages in beer that are sort of being resurrected now as people are more familiar with this type of brewing. Non-conventional ingredients bring aroma, bring additional attributes to a great beer, not just in flavor, but our community that does sweat for their beer and earns it asks for this. So at the end, that moment where you are looking for that handful of peanuts and those gummy bears and that chocolate milk to replenish you, we sort of say, well, we've got it all here in a beer now. So bee pollen's an example, added salt, black currant, lots of great examples out there that we can all touch on as brewers that bring in the needs and desires of sweaty consumers, as I dub them, but also enhance flavor and aroma. So you get best of both worlds there.
Yeah. How much of it is a desire to moderate consumption, from the consumer side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to share some fun facts. Some of our friends from Nielsen are here, and I asked them to, woo, Nielsen! But here's some of these facts are sobering, and some of them are encouraging. Sobering in the fact that Nielsen did a report recently, 52% of regular beer drinkers are actively making efforts to reduce their consumption of alcohol, and 2/3 of the biggest population group, which is millennials, are actually on that trip. That's a sobering fact for the beer industry. But interestingly also, 1/4 of all beer drinkers are more interested in finding beers that have wellness in mind than just 2 years ago. And lastly, health-related beverage alcohol social media searches are up almost 200% in the last 2 years. So you can see the scary trend of younger drinkers drinking less beer is hopefully, by the work of the craft brewing community, potentially going to be offset by their desire to drink beers that have more of a wellness bent to them. So I think we're well situated as a craft brewing community to engage with that moment.
So is the bet then that by creating products with more functional benefits, you're able to sort of offset some of the volume losses that might be ahead because consumers are moderating so much of their consumption now?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly believe so. We're all in on this moment when an industry has no growth. First of all, what other industry has no growth and has 1,000 new entrants in a year? That's fucking amazing, right?
Yeah.
But it speaks to the passion of our community. But it means finding white space in a no growth industry with 1,000 new entries is harder. And the IPA totem pole, it's pretty well stacked over there. So what else can you do to differentiate yourself in a meaningful way in a space that has growth? And that's a bet that I think all three of us are making.
Yeah. So Adam, where does hard kombucha fit in all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can fit in a number of places. Obviously, there's some that are doing the low-calorie play and doing the, zero to low-cal. We're in the lower-calorie area, but for us, there's a mixture. There's the probiotics that comes with regular kombucha, and our product is raw, unprocessed, and non-pasteurized, so it still has that probiotic content. So you've got the kind of the bugs that are good for digestion, but we also incorporate cold-pressed juice as well as herbs that we extract, so kind of along the functional benefit of the herbs that we extract in ours. And I think that, we don't make the claim, but a lot of our consumers say we don't get a hangover when we drink high alcohol or hard kombucha. And I think that comes from people drinking a product that's got cold-pressed juice in it. So you've got a replenishing product along with the alcohol that you're drinking rather than maybe something that's detrimental like, a soda or a mixer that's coming with a vodka or mixed drink. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people would turn to hard kombucha. A lot of people are gluten-free and can't drink beer anymore. Some people are vegan and looking for a vegan alternative. So I think it really touches on a lot of categories that were being missed by the more broad beer category.
Yeah, beyond the gluten-free consumer or the vegan consumer, who's drinking hard kombucha? Like, have you identified a target demo, and who is it?
Man, when we first started, we were did the whole exercise where you make your target consumer, and ours was like a yoga girl, this and that, and you're identifying the person that is going to drink your product, and it was completely blown out of the water. And we'd be at the farmers market selling, and there'd be people from all walks of life, young college-age kids all the way to, people in their 80s coming up and buying a case. One little old lady would come up and buy a case every week at the farmers market, like 80-year-old lady, and just walk off with her cart. And we're like, she wasn't in our target demo exercise. And we just had our 3rd anniversary party, and same thing. I mean, of course, there's people in the yoga community supporting our product, but I think it's something that's approachable for everyone. Do you want to feel good? Do you want to feel better the next day? Do you want to maybe not be so heavy or tired, or just really want to be the best version of yourself, which is kind of what we hope that people feel the next day or even while they're drinking our product.
Now, how about for Caitlin and Sam? Caitlin, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious who you're going after. You're going after the endurance athletes and the runners. But I imagine that there's a bit of an aspirational quality to all this as well. People who want to feel like they associate with those tribes, even if they're not directly in them every single day. What sort of consumers are your products reaching?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, certainly we're aspirational in the fact that we got our roots where we authentically belong, which is out on the trail or on the track. But it certainly, again, the whole inspiration behind the brand was so that you wouldn't have to settle, right? We have needs and desires as consumers, and you deserve a really, really great beverage and a great beer, as it were. For us, we. I'm having a moment here, but it's really about not settling, and therefore that aspiration really translates to who we are targeting, which is the millennial consumer, frankly. A lot of us go to the store and try a variety of options that are available to us, but I think more and more we're really seeing that our consumers and our tribe is voting with their dollars at the checkout. They really want an affinity with the brand. They really want to understand where their ingredients and their beer comes from. They're looking at the back of the label. We have all of our nutritional facts on our beers. We are a women-led and founded B Corp business that is celebrating the effort. Sufferfest Beer Company is named Sufferfest because we're not about wins and losses. We're about the effort, and therefore, even though we sort of talk about that top of the pyramid sweaty consumer, we're really hoping that people align with just making healthy choices at the checkout, agreeing with the values of the brands that they're bringing home, that they're sharing with their friends, which is why I think we've seen so much success on our part being a word-of-mouth brand with that millennial consumer, where they were once placing a lot of value on high-hopped, high ABV beers 5-10 years ago. Again, making that switch to sort of more active and healthy choices at the checkout register, and we're really aligning with that same mind frame that we're seeing that food and, of course, non-alcoholic beverage and now beverage alcohol has followed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Food and non-alc has innovated much faster, or I should say been much faster to innovate for the consumer, delivering products that have fewer ingredients, they are more transparent, they're more functional. And the beer category, and I guess the alcohol category in general, has been a little bit slower. Why has it taken the beer category so long to give consumers products like the ones that we're seeing hit the market now? And I'll kick that to Sam.
I don't know, man. Why? I don't know. I mean,
You did all the market research on Super 8 and Sequench and Slightly Mighty.
That was Nielsen, not me. I don't know. I'd say that for 30 years, craft brewers have led on innovation in the beer space. In the early days, that meant, making beers locally, unpasteurized, unfiltered, but traditional, European beer styles. That was sort of the first gen American craft brewers, raison d'etre. And then I think second gen started playing more with culinary ingredients, and this is a natural progression. And, for us, we're not super precious about, exactly who the audience for any of our beers are. We say it's off-center beers for off-center people, but they can be off-center in a zillion directions. So a beer like Slightly Mighty, which is slight in calories and carbs, but Mighty and hop character. We get tons of emails when Men's Health or Esquire writes about it. You get folks, they're on the keto diet and really care about some of the nutritional facts about Slightly Mighty. It's for folks on the keto diet, but it's also for, I think, folks on like the keto diet. And he was O.J. Simpson's pool boy, and he just wanted to hang out and pound like 12 or 14 drinks, listen to some Air Supply. He didn't give a shit about keto diet, right? He's Cato, not keto. So they can appeal to a broad range of people, not just hardcore athletes.
I'll refrain from any OJ jokes tonight. Thank you, Sam. You know what? There's a part of this too, and I mentioned it in the opening, that I feel is, the segment trying to capture some of the success that Michelob Ultra has. And, credit where credit is due, they created a massive opportunity in the, sort of lower cal, athletic-focused area of the beer market, catering to those individuals. And they've had a lot of success, and it's been a bit of a runaway train over the last few years. So how much of what we're seeing in the craft space is, hey, I see what Michelob Ultra is doing and I want a piece of that, and how much of it is, this is just what our consumers are asking for and we want to deliver those products? Anyone can take that.
I think it's probably a little bit of both. We certainly did not come in and say, hey, let's do what Michelob Ultra is doing and take a piece of that pie, but I would assume more of the bigger brands that are making investments in this space are saying, like, how can we capture some of that Michelob Ultra business with a better-for-you alcohol product? Some of the bigger beer boys that are seeing this, or even this. But I think a lot of it is really just being born and driven out of a genuine want or desire for a better product, from the founders themselves or their immediate communities. And that was what our desire was. That's where we came from. So I think it's probably a little bit of both. You've got the big boys trying to figure out how to correct the downward spiral, and then you've got the new entrants that weren't in beer before. So we're just looking to create something new that we didn't see in the market, maybe a white space.
Yeah. Caitlin?
I think we're sort of in the age of information, and for that reason, we're just way more discerning as consumers. We want to know sort of everything about, at least I do, in our community, about what we're putting into our bodies. And so I absolutely remember the first day my dad came home with a Mich Ultra after a day out on the links. And, even back then, I don't think they were necessarily trying to go after this sort of younger, healthy, and active consumer. They had just come out with something more innovative using a low-calorie product, but still targeting that baby boomer population. And they, I believe, I'm assuming here that they've also shifted with the times, given that in moving to a younger, more discerning, active lifestyle, as we all have, as trends around just the environment of drinking and consumables and beverage alcohol has changed even before their eyes. So I was definitely inspired as a young person, as someone who has an active lifestyle, about that brand. But again, I hadn't grown an affinity towards that brand. I didn't know anything about it. I could find a lot more information and a lot more value by looking at brands in this, again, age of information that I assigned some connection with. I didn't have a connection with that. And I think, again, we're seeing in that craft space, not only are we brewing great things and really innovative things, but the ability to go out into a community and really connect with a drinker, really focus on that tribe. I think that's the difference. And so not necessarily looking for that white space or trying to go into a lane that they've carved out, but essentially, I think, inspired a lot of people who were onto something and already, shaping that healthy and active space that already exists, but no one really talked to.
Yeah, I agree. And to add to that, like when we came out with Sequench in 2015, we thought it would be appealing to craft beer drinkers. Primarily, and we started getting a lot of social media feedback from Mich Ultra drinkers that said, I used to drink a lot of craft beer, but I too got my metabolism slowed down, and I went over to this, and Sequench Ale is relatively lower in calories and carbs than our previous beers, so they started looking at Sequence Ale, and we were like, okay. So really with Slightly Mighty, it was a blatant goal of saying, let's try and brew a full flavored IPA that has the exact same calorie count as Mick Ultra, because frankly, I got great respect for ABI that they did that they innovated and really created the active lifestyle beer space, but I got more trepidation about how they've come into the craft beer space. And from my perspective, this is an opportunity in the way that they came into our world with brands that they market, as if they still come from indie craft breweries. This is a way that we can come a little bit into their world and say, you know what, you've got a bunch of Mick Ultra drinkers, you've done an awesome job of innovating this product, but I bet there's a bunch of the people drinking Mick Ultra that would love to buy something from an American craft brewery, an indie craft brewery that's doing something innovative in that general active lifestyle space.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, round of
Clap to
applause.
that, yeah. Call to arms.
So, I think one of the issues that we've kind of danced around up here a little bit in some of everybody's danced around in the responses that you've gave is, and some of the questions that I've asked is, the ingredients themselves and the labeling of your products, which is kind of a tricky tightrope to walk, if you will, with the TTB and the claims that you're able to make. Adam, you're talking about the probiotics in a hard kombucha product and what that can do for your digestive system. Sam, you look at the Super 8 Super Goza. It's brewed with 8 superfoods, but you can't say that it's brewed with 8 superfoods.
You can, Chris. I hope this is being recorded.
So, I guess help our audience understand what you can and can't do from a labeling standpoint as it relates to claims, and how much you rely on the consumers to kind of do their own homework when they're, researching these products and ultimately deciding to purchase them.
So what we can't say is that Boochcraft will not give you a hangover. Remember that. But what we do say is we talk about the ingredients, and we really focus on what's going into the product, and we let the consumer make the decision for themselves. If they can read all the ingredients in the product and then make the decision, is cold-pressed turmeric juice and cold-pressed ginger juice good for me? And then they probably know a lot about those ingredients. I think that letting the consumer make the decision rather than making a health claim, which is illegal, and saying this is going to be make you feel better, or this is going to prevent you from getting some disease, which is obviously illegal to make a claim like that on an alcoholic container. We'd rather just let them choose for themselves what is good for me based on the ingredients going in. And we can make claims that are not claims but actual facts, like there's probiotics in this, it's raw, it's organic, it's gluten-free, it has these ingredients. And that's kind of what we focus on, is really what's going in, and then we let everyone make the decision if that's something that's good for them.
Yeah. Sam, you've gone about it in a creative way. You've created superheroes.
They're not super fruits, they're just superheroes.
Yeah.
Whatever. But we walked that line. Caitlin said very well earlier that, the younger of age consumers generally are so excited to learn more about ingredients and wellness. This is a case where usually you're like, oh, listen to your elders. At this moment in Alc Bev, we need to listen to our youngers, because they're the ones who are kind of driving this move towards wellness Alc Bev, and they've got their phones in their hand and the information at their fingertips. As long as we state our ingredients, our process, do our storytelling, let them discover their view of what makes it a wellness-oriented drink in a way that the TB prevents us from doing proactively. And I think Sean, our legal eagles in the room, and my shock ankle bracelet would go off. But for example, we can say Sequence Ale was objectively designed at a molecular level to be the most thirst-quenching beer Dogfish Head has ever brewed. We'd never say something like it's the most hydrating beer in the world, because that is a health claim, and you can't do something like that. So we're very, very careful that the language we use, we vet it through the expectations of the TTB. But the First Amendment's a beautiful thing, and consumers can talk to each other about what is really in a beverage.
Yeah. But at the same time, what do you risk when you allow the end consumer to have that much control over the way your product ultimately is discussed out in the world of beer. It could be through media, it could be through word of mouth. You don't have as much control over shaping what the consumer believes at the end of the day, and they're kind of informing themselves and coming to their own conclusions. So what's at risk but when you consider the sort of difficulty in being truly transparent?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's certainly a dance, and I think for us, though, the ability to listen to consumers, to hear what they have to say, to continue to innovate products based on their needs, it's a great feedback loop for us. In fact, I think we like to sort of have the harness removed and allow people to speak on our behalf when we really can't. Again, we listen to our tribe. They ask us and they talk to us about ingredients that would be really beneficial for them in their beers. And they are informed, and they've done their research, and they know what they want to consume. Simply by the same points that have been made by Adam and Sam here is, we can expressly claim, the ingredients in our beers and move forth with exactly what we need to say and what we're allowed to say compliantly, and let everyone else make those connections. I think for us and our brand in particular, we have a virtual tap room. We're an occasion beer brand. We want to be at that moment where you have just completed your sweatiest endeavor, or you feel like you've really earned your beer. And so for that reason, you will find us at a climbing gym, at an Orange Theory, at an Equinox, at a Crag, at our Finish Line, at a Trailhead, and then that's your discovery mechanism to go to the store and find a beer of ours that you really like because you've had that experience. Already we sort of set the stage for our community members to sort of make those connections, learn from others, hear what a trusted referral means to them in their lives, and then make their purchase. So for us, yes, it's a risk, but it's certainly a risk that I think if I could speak on behalf of this group, that we're willing to take, because we need that feedback loop, and it's really important that these products get out to other trustworthy members of their drinking community.
I would assume that all of you guys would be on board with greater transparency in labeling as it relates to nutrition facts panels and things that you can and can't do on the bottles and cans themselves versus secondary packaging, website, promotional materials, all that. I'll just say, are you guys in favor of greater transparency on labels? And two, where do you think all that's headed in the future? Is there going to be a time where it's required?
I mean, I think in our space, definitely. Kombucha's in kind of a weird space. Every time I call the TTB, they don't know whether or not we're a beer or a kombucha. Or, we call different states and they want to make us a wine. And so there's a lot of debate over what we even are, even though we're regulated as beer by the TTB. So for labeling purposes, I mean, we're moving to nutrition facts on our label. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, you probably have more insight from the beer world, both of you all, but I imagine the nutrition facts are going to be on all of the labels at some point. I mean, I don't see how it's any different than food. We're putting it in our bodies, we're eating it, we're ingesting it. Shouldn't we know what's in the product? And so I think there's a big expense and investment required to do the testing and verify what's in there, but I think it's worth it to the consumer to have the transparency and know what's inside the products that they're consuming.
Caitlin?
Yeah, no, I'm nodding vigorously here because I don't know why we wouldn't treat our beverage alcohol differently than our food that we pick up at the store. So every inch of my being believes in being transparent and having those nutritional facts readily available to consumers. I think, again, to Sam's point, I think this is really where craft has a leg up. This is where we innovate, we brew the best beers. I think we should be acknowledged and allow that feedback loop of being transparent about the ingredients that we use. I think we have an average analysis on all of our beers at Sufferfest, but we've actually gotten pushback from having nutritional panels. So we have some work to do there, but we really believe that, obviously, I think the pushback has to do with, any of that information alluding to a health benefit or a health claim. And I think that's the concern there. But I think there are really easy, straightforward ways that we can work with the TTB to do that. But I think it does allow the craft community to come, call to arms, and brew terrific beers that have quality ingredients at their forefront.
Sam, I'll put you on the spot. Maybe you know this. I don't know it, for the record. How many calories are in a 120-minute IPA?
Next question, please. No, so like 15 years ago, we were in an arms race with our chums at Boston Beer to brew the strongest beer in the world. They had Triple Bock, and then we had Worldwide Stout. Then they had Millennial, and we were trying to beat them. And we did another batch of Worldwide Stout, and we sent it out to a third-party lab to validate what we were hoping would be the strongest beer in the world. And they said, we got some good news and bad news for you. Your beer is the second strongest beer in the world at 21-point-something% alcohol. But it's the most caloric beer we've ever tested in this lab. It's 666 calories per 12-ounce serving, like the Antichrist of beer. So
that was a Worldwide Stout.
Every beer has its place. That beer should be in the emergency kit of everyone's car, because if you get snowed in, you could live for like a week off of that one bottle of beer.
As long as you don't have to drive anywhere after you
Oh,
drink it.
yeah. This is in the back seat, keys out of the other thing. Yeah.
Especially not in a Bronco. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do it. Okay.
So we through our social media, we're always talking about our ingredients and the nutritional information in our beers, but with finite space on packaging, we try to highlight the fact that we use all real, natural culinary ingredients, and a good chunk of our space is also taken up by our decision to lean into the indie craft brewers seal. So that's a choice that we're making, but we're always talking about the nutritional facts about our beers.
So 7,300 breweries in this country, varying sizes, varying capabilities. If there ever comes a time where nutrition facts panels are required, what sort of impact would that have on the businesses that may or may not be able to actually, perform that task at the flip of a switch, or have the resources to get all their beers tested? I mean, if we wake up tomorrow and suddenly nutrition fact panels are required, what happens to the category?
Pastry stouts are fucked.
Sufferfest will be killing it.
Would you expect a lot of breweries to be set back considerably? I mean,
I like to think the spirit of innovation in our industry would navigate that moment and say, how do we apply our creativity to this new nuanced component of what's expected, I mean, let's face it, if you go for a run or a bike or do something active every day, you can have some Imperial IPAs, but if you don't, it's gonna have detrimental effects.
Yeah. One of the things that we haven't touched on yet is the non-alcoholic segment. And there's obviously, where's Bill from Athletic Brewing? There he is. There's obviously increasing interest in moderation, but there's, and Bill would totally correct me on the stats, but something like 40% of this country that doesn't drink any alcohol and abstains completely. And there's a pretty big opportunity there as well to, reach consumers who are, actively avoiding alcohol and give them an experience with a beverage product that they either choose not to consume or they can't consume for health reasons. Where do you see the non-alcoholic portion of this segment going?
Are you guys doing any kombuchas that are lower than the threshold of TTB World?
We're not right now. I mean, we actually originally started, we thought we were going to do a 1% kombucha, and then we started talking about the 7% one, and no one was interested in the 1% one when we started talking about the 7% one. But I think, every fifth question we get on social media and, and email is, when are you going to do a non-alc? When are you going to do a non-alc? Because people, as much as they want to drink Boochcraft every day, I think 7% alcohol, 22-ounce bomber is not the thing you drink every day. So we're definitely, it's top of mind for us to come out with an NA version or something maybe that's lower, like a 1%, kind of like a GT's Black Label. But I think it's a huge segment. I mean, I think that people want to go to a bar and not feel left out when they don't order a beer or a wine. And when I used to have my bar in San Diego, we had a craft beer bar, rotating taps. My first experience with kombucha was making homebrew kombucha and serving it on tap, and I'm pretty sure it was under 0.5%. It was a huge product demand for us because we had a lot of people coming in and wanting a non-alcoholic option, and I think that's a segment that will continue to grow.
How about for craft beer? I mean, there seems to be a pretty large void there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're big fans of Athletic. We stock our fridge with Athletic Brewing as well. I think 1 in 5 people ask you. I think 1 in 2 people ask us. We think there's a great opportunity there, and frankly, being a brand that's designed for sweaty consumers or healthy and active people, that really is the apex drinker in my mind. Someone who really wants to participate in the craft scene, be acknowledged for their achievement, have earned their beer, but obviously they're making a choice on what they want to put in their body, and they should never settle and have that moment, and that occasion should be designed for them in a very craft way. And so for that reason, we don't believe that we, at least in my opinion, from our brand's perspective, we're not here to try to get as close to a alcoholic beer as possible. We're trying to design a non-alcoholic, the Sufferfest way, and that really has to do more with the values that you assign in your life, participating and being part of a community. So I think it's a huge moment, in my opinion, for craft, and I think, again, back to innovation and where we really have a leg up. This is another area where it's sort of our time to shine, to show our interpretations of how all different styles of beer and brewing can be made and made differently and really, really drinkable.
Yeah, I mean, props to Athletic. I think it's cool that Brooklyn's starting to do that. And Mariah and I were just in Belgium and the Netherlands, hanging out with brewers over there. And, in some markets, non-alc beer has like a 10 or 15% market share. It's like 1% here. And so I do think it's going to be a growing sector. We're not actively playing in it, but, a lot of great things started in Europe, democracy, things like that.
So what I'm hearing is that you're watching the space. You can say it into the microphone. It's okay. Nice. So we got just a couple more minutes. We talked a little bit about the transparency, the labeling. We've talked about just all the different functional products that are emerging and the ways that you guys build fan bases and consumer groups. I guess long term, where do you see all this headed? Be it hard kombucha, non-alc, functional beer, gluten-reduced beer, whatever it is, hard seltzer, everything that's kind of playing in this space. How big of a percentage of the beer category can all these products be over the long term, the next, say 3 to 5 years? Don't all jump at once.
Well, I mean, I guess our best data point would be Mick Ultra at roughly 10 million barrels. That's more, that one liquid stream is more than all the beers combined of Boston Beer, Yingling, Sierra, New Belgium, and Dogfish, one liquid stream. So I think that should tell us all in this room what the prize could be. And hopefully I hope they have a great journey with their versions of active lifestyle beers. And I hope the indie craft brewing movement has a great journey with ours.
Yeah. Caitlin?
Yeah, I was going to just say that, or tack onto that, I mean, there's 8 million barrels of macro light lagers out there that's brewed every year, and to even take a chunk of that, I should say 80 million, not 8 million, 80 million, to take a portion of that and again brew the way that we are sort of designed as craft brewers to brew. I think that's just a growing and large white space for us to prove out. I think, again, we sort of seen it from a retail perspective and a wholesaler perspective, but wellness and different categories with down the aisle in a retail environment, those wellness sets that we're seeing more and more of, I think we're going to have a lot of ability to flex our muscles there as we're partnered with some of the greatest brand supports and like-minded brands out there in the hard seltzer space and in the kombucha space. And be able to see more and more of just like-minded craft makers taking over some of our great real estate in the grocery stores.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting point too. I've actually heard of some wholesalers that are building out and merchandising entire sets dedicated to health and wellness within the alcohol segment. I know Reyes is doing this, at least in California, and actually stating on the shelves, hey, this is a hard kombucha, or these are hard kombuchas that have probiotic qualities. These are gluten-reduced beers. These beers have functional ingredients like electrolytes. Do you think we'll see more retailers be open-minded and start actually building out entire sets of quote-unquote better-for-you alcoholic products?
I do. I mean, we had some great meetings with some of our distributor partners today, among them Reyes, and they have to be, like us, they have to be very thoughtful in what they put up for wording in those active lifestyle-oriented sets, and they can't call out functional benefits like electrolytes, but they can say, and they can't call it brands in the POS that they put up, but they can set it up with an active lifestyle vibe to it, photographs and sayings, and then let the brands within that set speak for themselves. And Ron, who runs our chain world, was also talking about Target is now doing some tests on active lifestyle sets. So it's super encouraging when a sophisticated retailer of that scale is leading on something like this.
Yeah. Opportunity abounds, it sounds like. Well, if anyone out there in the audience is thinking about getting into this space, what should they know? This will be our final question. If they're thinking about brewing a hard kombucha maybe, or getting into gluten-reduced beers with electrolytes, or maybe trying to brew with monk fruit.
Come up with your own fucking ideas.
Yeah.
No, I would just say, seriously, when people say, "Oh, the industry's not growing, should I open a brewery?" I always say, "Hell yeah!" There's room in every great town in America for another new awesome brewery if they do three things well: quality, consistency, and being well differentiated. And the last one's critical because for karma reasons, you shouldn't step on the innovations of other folks. You should find your own. And there's a zillion. There's more ingredient combinations, culinary ingredient combinations possible than there are words that you can protect in names for the TTB. So I think we're just at the start of a wonderful moment of people finding their own space in this world.
Yeah. What should they know if they're going to get into this this emerging segment?
I think, for me and for us in our company, there's a lot of high alcohol kombuchas coming up and popping up, and I think the more the merrier because it grows the space. But one thing that I really feel is that if the brand, whether it's a hard kombucha or a functional beer or a beer with culinary ingredients that's brewing something different, sticks to the values and really it has the shared values across the board that the consumer aligns with, that they're going to be successful and they're going to win. And that if they're just brewing something to get a piece of the action but they don't have the values to back it up, then they're probably not going to win in the space. And I think for us, we would love to have all ships rise with a tide with other like-minded, value-driven brands, and that's what we're looking for.
Awesome. Caitlin, the final word.
Yeah, I think it was Phil Knight, founder of Nike, who said, "I don't care if people hate us as long as enough people love us." And I think being really true to yourself, what you stand for, why you exist. A rising tide does raise all ships. I think this is a really, really unique time, but I also believe that real recognizes real. And as long as you're laser focused on who you're serving, I think there's a lot of room for innovation. I do think, just like we experienced in coffee, this is the third wave of craft. I think we're getting our swagger back. I think we're getting that capital C back around innovation and a really fun place to play. So you do you.
Awesome. Big round of applause for our panelists. First panelist of the night. On that note, let's go drink some low-calorie IPAs, and then we'll be back here for our last panel of the evening.